Hello everybody, my name is Cole, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than we normally do on the channel. We're going to be talking about the drama slash state of the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game versus the Pokemon trading card game. This past weekend, as of August 20th is when I'm recording this, the Pokemon World Championships happened alongside of YCS San Francisco, the Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, if you're unfamiliar with Yu-Gi-Oh. If you are, welcome to the channel. This is definitely a Yu-Gi-Oh channel, but welcome anyway. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about the little discussion slash conversation over Twitter that has been happening since the finals of the trading card game for the Pokemon World Championships just wrapped up. And it's more so specifically about the fact that the Pokemon trading card game is a significantly cheaper game to get into. And one personality on YouTube, MBT, said that why would we get into Pokemon because Yu-Gi-Oh is just better, essentially. That's not quoted word for word, but that's more or less the gist of it. And they go on to say that the winning Pokemon deck for the World Championships was just Pokemon's version of Runic Stun, or a Floodgate-like deck, or highly toxic kind of a deck. And that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about. So let's go ahead and get into it, starting with my history and background with the Pokemon franchise, as well as specifically the trading card game as a whole. Starting out, the Pokemon franchise is my favorite franchise of all time. Here is some B-roll you can see over the top of the screen of how much I really do just love this franchise. The games, the manga, the trading card game, of course, especially because that's kind of the topic of today. But literally everything Pokemon I pretty much like. I'm really into the apps right now as well, specifically Pokemon Sleep. And so, yes, everything Pokemon I am a huge fan of. So it was only natural that I did try the trading card game at one point in my life, and I still love the trading card game. Not as much as Yu-Gi-Oh, but which is what we're going to get into. So back in 2018, the end of 2017, beginning of 2018 is when I started getting into the Pokemon trading card game. Much more heavier than any other trading card game I'd gotten to at that point. I'd kind of dabbled in a little bit of everything, especially Yu-Gi-Oh, because I've always kind of been with Yu-Gi-Oh since I was a kid, but just very off and on. Nowhere near as much as I am now, but like I said, I had a disposable income, essentially. I mean, I was, what, 21, 22 at the time? Maybe 23? I don't know. I was, going to college. I had a job. I had some money to spend on the side for entertainment, and I chose to put my money into the Pokemon trading card game. So, back in 2018, the deck that I played was Gardevoir GX and Zoroark GX. Now, I don't have the deck anymore. I'm slowly starting working on rebuilding it, and I don't know, I just want to have that deck again. Anyway, that's besides the point. So like I said, I ran Gardevoir GX and I ran Zoroark GX, and of course I had the Tapu Lele GX, which was a requirement for pretty much every single deck in the format. It's basically our top tier staple. It was like our Ash Blossom, for lack of a better example. Now, at the time, I purchased, I think I had 3 Tapu Lele. I don't think I ever got 4. I don't think I never really needed the 4th one, but 3 Tapu Lele, I think I purchased each one of them for $40 a piece. So that's a pretty substantial price, especially compared to nowadays Pokemon trading card game. Granted, Tapu Lele was a bit of an exception for the Pokemon trading card game. It really was every single deck ran it. Not just some decks, every single deck ran a Tapu Lele GX. Anyway, that's probably the most expensive thing that I dealt with a Pokemon trading card game back then. But anyway, moving on to more of the background. So, like I said, I played during 2018. At the time, I decided to go to the Portland Regionals. I don't remember which month it was, but it was 2018. So at that Regionals, I did, of course, play the Gardevoir GX with the Zoroark GX because of the synergies, and my favorite aspect of the Pokemon trading card game is building decks that you pretty much always have access to everything you always need. And so I also played things like Puzzle of Time. If you know the card, you know the card. That tournament was actually won by a Garbodor deck. So Garbodor at the time was a very well-known card, and the reason I'm even bringing it up right now is more so because it's also reminiscent of the current the 2024 World Championships deck. So Garbodor has an ability that reads, if this Pokemon has a Pokemon Tool card attached to it, each Pokemon in play, in each player's hand, and in each player's discard pile has no abilities save for this Garbodor. Which is incredibly oppressive. You literally could not play the game. As a result, everybody and their dog was playing a card called Field Blower to deal with this Garbodor specifically. I mean, Field Blower was a decent card, but like, you were not running it for really anything else. You didn't really care about anything else. You ran Field Blower specifically for Garbodor so that you'd be able to play around it. And it ended up winning this tournament that I went to. Lo and behold, that same year's World Championships, 2018 World Championships, Garbodor won it again because Garbodor is just that good and that oppressive and that stun-like of a deck that happens a lot in all different kinds of trading card games. And so that is essentially my background with the Pokemon trading card game. Let's go into a little bit how just the Pokemon trading card game is played a little bit if you don't know, because like I said, this is definitely just a Yu-Gi-Oh channel specifically. Pokemon is a turn-based trading card game where you more or less do not have any interaction with your opponent save for attacking them and a couple of cards here and there. One of the examples of that card being something like an Iono. Iono just shuffles your hand and your opponent's hand and then puts them on the bottom of your opponent and your deck, and then you get to draw however many cards you have left for your prize cards, which is essentially how you win in the Pokemon trading card game. Anyway, so there is not a lot you can do to your opponent save for attacking them, and that is just more or less how it works. You play your Pokemon on your field, you attach your energies, you play your items cards, you play your supporter cards so you can slowly build up your board so that your opponent can't just destroy you. And then at the end of your turn, you attack, and that literally is the last thing you do in your turn is attack, and then you pass to your opponent's turn. And back when I was playing in 2018 with my buddy, when we just play after dinner or something like that, this point of time during the match, we'd literally just get on our phone and start scrolling because we're not doing anything anyway, unless obviously our opponent played something like an Iono. Back in the day, it was N specifically that you would see a lot of the time. However, that is more or less how the game is played. You play your Pokemon, you can evolve your Pokemon, and they get their abilities to help set up their board. For example, this Gardevoir EX deck that I currently have built, which is the current meta, not meta of the trading card game, just like in the current meta you can play, or the rotation, there we go, there's the word. You can attach an energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon and they take damage. There's some fun synergies where Pokemon like Screamtail and Drifloon can get stronger attacks if they've got damage on them because of Gardevoir's ability. You attach the energy to them and they take damage, and by doing so can do more damage to your opponent's Pokemon. So that is essentially the deck that I'm playing currently, if I ever do play, which is pretty dang infrequent. But yeah, that is the Pokemon trading card game. It's very much so back and forth. Very, very little interaction with your opponent, save for some things here and there. Especially like we talked about just a second ago with that Garbodor effect, making it so your opponent, and or rather all abilities in play, don't do anything. So, keeping that in mind, let's talk about that World Championships deck. So the 2024 World Championship deck list that won was an Iron Thorns EX deck, which has an ability that reads, as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, Pokemon with a rule box in play, both yours and your opponent's, have no abilities except for future Pokemon, which is the gimmick of this Pokemon. It's got the little tag in the top left or the top right corner of the card that says future, so it's a future Pokemon. When it says rule box as well, it just means things like these Gardevoir EX cards, where it has the Pokemon EX rule, Pokemon with like the high HPs, the EX moniker, the GX moniker from back in the day, or even the V moniker. They have a rule box, and so that's what it's talking about. Those Pokemon don't have abilities, but as it would so happen, that sounds very familiar. That Garbodor that we were just talking about also says basically the same thing. However, that Garbodor was definitely stronger. Let's continue looking more at this deck to see why MBT specifically would call it a Pokemon version of Runic Stun. So there's a card called Judge in here, which makes each player shuffle their hand into their deck and then draw 4. Now, Pokemon is all about setting up for your next turn. A lot of the times I've played anyway, I mean, a lot of the decks that I play are kind of that way. You put cards into your hand that you can't necessarily play right now, but your next turn, you are so set up and you're going to go off so hard in your next turn, but your opponent can play something like a Judge or an Iono to make you get rid of your hand and shovel it back into your deck. So Judge specifically, and as well as Iono, they are a little bit oppressive. They can do some things here and there that can really screw up a potential play that you might have set up for later on. Giovanni's Charisma is another one of these, I don't want to call them toxic cards because they're not super toxic, but altogether they kind of become that. So it says, put an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon into their hand. So energy are the cards that make it so your Pokemon can use their attacks. If you don't have the prerequisite amount of energy on your Pokemon, you can't do an attack. This Gardevoir EX requires 2 Psychic Energy and 1 Colorless Energy, or more or less just 3 total energies. And so, if you have 3 energies on your Pokemon, you attack, or maybe you only have 2 energies on your Pokemon and you can't attack, so you pass your turn, your opponent plays Giovanni's Charisma, getting rid of 1 more energy, so your next turn, if you needed 3 energies on your Pokemon, you wouldn't be able to attack because you don't have enough energies to attack. Even though you had 2 the previous turn, you lost 1. So now it's your turn again, you got to add 1. You get what I'm saying. And then the ultimate one that is very, very similar is called Crushing Hammer. The World Championship deck played it at 4. It says flip a coin. If heads, discard an energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon. I'll have you know that those Garbodor decks I talked about earlier did not run the Crushing Hammer card. They could have. It was in the rotation at the time. However, they opted for more things like consistency or other options, like the World Championship list ran the same Zoroark that I ran in my Gardevoir deck, Zoroark GX, and the Portland Regionals list. They had other things like Espeon GX, so that could be their attacker, their primary attacker, as well as having the Garbodor ability to turn everything else off. Now, the last card in the deck that I wanted to bring up is Canceling Cologne. Until the end of your turn, your opponent's active Pokemon has no abilities. This can just shut down a lot of different things here and there. It's things that your Iron Thorns EX couldn't do. This gets rid of those as well. It's just a lot of things all in around, trying to be a control deck. As NBT put it, a runic stun of Pokemon. And I definitely do agree. Back in the 2018 days when I was playing Pokemon, I never wanted to play against a Garbodor deck because they were just that oppressive. I remember building one and then playing it, and it just not being very fun to play against other people because you could tell your opponent wasn't having fun, you weren't having fun because your opponent wasn't having fun, and that brings us a little bit back towards Yu-Gi-Oh! Because Yu-Gi-Oh! Also has these same similar problems, where if you are playing a stun deck or a floodgate deck, your opponent's definitely not having fun, and you're probably not having as much fun because there's not as much interaction going on, which is literally the thing that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has above every other card game. Before I really dive into that, I want to talk about one last thing about the Pokemon trading card game, though, which is essentially what Pokemon does good and far better than Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever has, and probably ever will. Save for, I guess, Rarity Collection, which is the closest thing we've had to it. And that, of course, is the pack structure. So, Pokemon's pack structure is very interesting. You get 10 total cards. You can have any number of commons and uncommons. You get 1 rare and 2 reverse holos. So, I want to point this out with this card, Screamtail. This Screamtail is a uncommon version of the card. I also have right here a reverse holo version of the card. And inside of my deck, I don't know if you remember seeing it, but we have a promo Screamtail, which has some really cool art, which I believe is like a super rare or special super secret, I don't know, illustration rare. Anyway, these are all 3 the same card. They all 3 do exactly the same thing gameplay wise. You can run this one and you can run this one, and they do the same thing. This one obviously looks cooler, but I mean, that's just how it works. It's really cool. Pokemon has that Yu-Gi-Oh! Just does not. We do have alternate arts here and there, but if you're trying to pull a copy of like a Fiendsmith Engraver, you're literally only getting in Secret Rare, maybe Quarter Century Secret Rare, but that's a weird thing that's happening right now since for like the past 2 years with Yu-Gi-Oh sets. Regardless, secret rare is your best bet. You don't have an option of a common or a super rare, or the secret rare. You only have the secret rare, and that's what you get. As of recording this video, Fiendsmith Engraver sells on TCG Player as an average of $95 roughly. This deck right here that I have for the Pokemon trading card game is roughly $50. Maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on how you build it or how you bling it out, because there's also some cards in here that are a little bit blinged out. There's the Fluttermane full art, that's not blinged out, that's blinged, that's some bling right there. Just some examples. Here's some Iono full art. So you do have some bling in your decks that you can do, which can up the price of your decks. But if I'm buying the base rarity of every single one of these cards, you could buy 2 of these decks for basically 1 Fiendsmith Engraver, which is absurd. This card is worth this deck times 2. Insane. For that reason alone, most people probably would want to play Pokemon, and I completely get that. Now, there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about with the Pokemon pack structure as well before we move on. Say you want a play set of cards, Iono being the example here, because Iono is probably one of the most prominent cards in the trading card game currently. You want a play set of Iono. You don't want to buy singles. You don't want to buy any special packages, which is where I got these Ionos, because I got 4 a play set for buying a specific package that came with sleeves and packs as well. You want 4 copies of Iono. You don't care the rarity. You just want them. You want to open them from a pack. You go out to buy a box of, I don't remember what pack it is. It's like the second Scarlet and Violet pack where Iono is in. You buy 1 box, you've got a good chance of pulling a playset of Iono. You'll at least get 1 for sure. I'm almost going to guarantee that. I mean, I can't guarantee anything for packs, but you could pretty much guarantee at least 1 Iono. Probably 2, maybe 3, and potentially a playset. More often than not, probably a playset of Iono. Now, put that in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh! Say you want a copy of Triple Tactics Thrust. You buy a box, you're guaranteed 2 secret rares per box. Like I said, guaranteed. There's roughly 10 secret rares per Yu-Gi-Oh! Set, so you're not going to get Thrust every time you want it. And that's just 1 box. You go buy yourself a case of Photon Hypernova, you might get a playset of Triple Tactics Thrust. Probably won't, maybe 2, maybe just 1, but if you're lucky, yeah, you'll get 3 of them. And that's ridiculous. A case of Yu-Gi-Oh cards is like $1,000. A box of Pokemon cards is like $100. And just like Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi-Oh's like a box is like $100. The fact that in 1 box you can get a playset of one of the most prominent meta staples is just, it's crazy thinking about that in the Yu-Gi-Oh terms. If you were to buy a box of Infinite Forbidden, you would get lucky if you pulled a Fiendsmith Engraver. Obviously, you would not get 3 of them so that you could have your playset. But that's just the differences between Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh with their pack structure. I obviously really think that Yu-Gi-Oh should adopt something like Pokemon's got. I think the Asian English OCG version, not OCG, just Asian English Yu-Gi-Oh, those packs that are coming out, I think in Korea, I believe, they do something like that. I'm pretty sure you can get like super rare SP Little Knights there, as well as like secret rare SP Little Knights in the same pack. I don't know why we don't have that in the TCG over here in the West, but we should totally adopt that, Konami. That would be super, super sweet. We do have something similar to that with the rarity collections, where you can get every single card and every single rarity there. I think it should just happen in every single one of our main sets as well. Anyway, let's now talk about the final thing, which is why I like Yu-Gi-Oh over the Pokemon trading card game, and why I play the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game instead of the Pokemon trading card game. Pokemon may be a lot cheaper, and by a lot cheaper, I mean a lot cheaper. But no other trading card game is like Yu-Gi-Oh! Every other trading card game out there, more or less, has a back and forth, but only when it's your turn and only when it's your opponent's turn they get to play. You'll have some things here and there with things like Magic the Gathering or even like Grand Archive, where you can play an instant action kind of a spell-like thing on your opponent's turn, but more often than not, there is zero interaction on your opponent's turn. You pass your turn, you get on your phone, start scrolling, doom scrolling Twitter or Reddit, or whatever it might be for you, and then when they're done, they'll let you know, and then you can do your thing while they doom scroll on Twitter or Reddit or whatever it might be for them. But Yu-Gi-Oh! You have to be attentive. You have to be watching for these choke points. You have to know, oh, my opponent activated Branded Fusion. I better activate my Ash Blossom. Or I know my opponent might have an Ash Blossom. I need to set my fusion deployment as if I'm playing Branded Fusion. You know how it goes. I love that aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh! Just the interaction between your opponent, the back and forth. Of course, this does get kind of thwarted by floodgates and stun decks, but that's not really what this is. The whole point of this video was me talking about why I kind of dislike stun decks in any trading card game and why they are also pretty toxic in any trading card game. But I don't know, like there's some viability to them where they don't have to be toxic, but they definitely will be. I don't know. That's a whole nother discussion. Regardless, stun isn't really great in any game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is my preferred trading card game because of the interaction with your opponent and your back and forth. No other trading card game does it like Yu-Gi-Oh! So that's why I enjoy playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Over anything else. I still love the Pokemon trading card game, and I'll pretty much be buying a deck almost every format or every other format based on how I like them. The decks that I currently have are the, as you saw, the Gardevoir EX or GX deck. No, that's not right. It is EX deck. I have the Suicune V and a Magcargo GX, all from different periods of time. This is Scarlet Violet. This is Sword and Shield. This is technically Sun and Moon right here. The Suicune deck can basically be searching for cards whenever they need it, whatever card they might need because of the Sobble line. They've got abilities that let you search specific cards to get whatever you might want. Magcargo does some fun stuff by setting things on the top of the grave or top of your deck and then discarding them. If they're an energy, you attach it to the Magcargo. Super fun stuff. The deck that I played forever ago, because of the Zoroark GX, you're just drawing cards like crazy. Super fun. That's my preferred style of Pokemon deck, is getting what you need right when you want it, right when you need it. But hey, Yu-Gi-Oh! Does that with every single deck. Every single deck searches for things. Every single deck says, oh, hey, you gonna normal summon your elemental hero Stratos? You're gonna get yourself another elemental hero. You search your deck for things all the time in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pokemon, it's a little bit more rare. You may draw a lot more cards than Pokemon, but it's definitely more rare to be searching very specific things. I mean, you get occasional things like an Ultra Ball, but a lot of it's more random in Pokemon. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the only games I've ever seen that is very heavy on searching. Over like a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I played Lorcana for some of the first time in my life. There is like zero searching in that game. You just hope you top deck what you need when you need it. And that's a little crazy, I think. Fun game, but I think it's got a little ways to go with some more cards to make it more fun. Anyway, now I'm just rambling, but that's what I wanted to share with you all today. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great one. We'll see you later.